Power is the hunger, yes, and money is the feed. Oil is what they make it with, though some just call it greed. Empire logic throwing very loaded dice. They come up with the loser and we all pay the price. Well, they said it wouldn't happen, and they lied in your face. And they covered up their excess to keep it in its place. Lining influential pockets of the politic machine, sucking up their fortunes from a can of gasoline. This is the price of our glory.
The Leader is taking you downtown to Seattle's Westlake Center on the 17th of May, 2001, to join a protest against Shell Oil.
CCJ is a multiracial, people of color-led organization that is addressing disproportionate environmental health risks to people of color and indigenous people around the world. The reason that we're here today is to not only draw attention to the fact that Shell Oil today, in fact, as we speak, right now, NDC is getting an award for environmental achievement from the World Environment Center. And we feel, based on their record in the Niger Delta, Nigeria, and Ogoniland, as well as Louisiana and around the world, they do not deserve an environmental award because they continue to rape and assault the communities of people of color. And that is why we're here. This is not just about environmentalism. We are environmental justice activists. This is a movement that stands on its own from the environmental movement. It links civil rights and environmental activism. It also links social justice.
They are destroying the environment in Ogoniland in Nigeria. They have wreaked havoc on the Ogoni people since 1958, destroying their villages, plundering the land, polluting the water, the air, the food supply for the Ogoni people. And they have been responsible for helping to sanction the violence of the Nigerian government over the years against the Ogoni people on behalf of Shell. Under the Abacha dictatorship and the previous regime, Shell was complicit in untold crimes against the Ogoni people. Men, women, and children murdered who have been resisting Shell's deplorable policies in that part of Nigeria.
Major corporations keep their facade going as they give each other awards, you know, with good-sounding names.
If you look at the record of all the major oil companies, including British Judge Shell, you see that there's a clear pattern of environmental destruction and disrespect for human beings around the globe. It manifests itself, I think, more particularly against people of color who tend to have less political power in this country in a lot of places. So it's important to build those links of communities of color, working class people, environmentalists around the world.
When you look at who's in the sweatshops, it's primarily women and people of color. And so that's why it is important that our movement represent that. We all breathe, we all eat, we're all being poisoned, but what we're saying is our communities are getting an extra burden that we can't afford. We have so many other issues.
But Shell's crimes don't start there or end there. They also extend globally. We can go to the little town of Norco, Louisiana, and New Sarpy, Louisiana. The small community of Norco is a mostly African American community where the people live 17 feet from the fence line of Shell Chemical. People who are trying to get out of harm's way because Shell moved next door to them, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Shell pollutes. Shell has explosions that take place on a fairly regular basis. People can't sleep at night. Over the years, the explosions at Shell has damaged the homes of the people. The accidental releases of toxic emissions have made people sick. Shell has never taken responsibility for its action. So for a company like Shell to be receiving an environmental award when they have committed these kinds of crimes against people from the United States to Africa and all over the world is an absolute shame.
Actually, very rarely is it a question of jobs or the environment.
Look at OSHA. OSHA, for whatever clout it had all its teeth pulled during the Reagan era, and nobody's given it a set of dentures since then. I mean, that's one example. You know, they've cut the funding, they've cut the staffing, and then they say, look, this is an ineffective organization. You know, so let's just kill it all away. Well, hello, you know, you put the bullet in its heart. And even at its best, government organizations are accountable to the government. The government is not accountable to the people in this country. The government's accountable to the corporations. So we would be naive, just in principle, to expect that they're really going to look out for helping move things forward in a really positive way that's going to benefit the masses of people in this world.
To protest Shell Oil basically receiving an environmental award from an organization that, you know, must be a corporate front in order to actually give Shell Oil an award on how they treat the environment. And I think it's interesting, actually, that this is happening the same time that President Bush is releasing his energy plan. His energy plan totally focuses in on, you know, exhaustible, non-renewable resources, and it's really about just like extracting. It's really about just like, you know, raping the environment a lot of ways, in ways that have absolutely no foresight.
Global warming is real. It's going to happen, and he needs to be doing something about it.
Yeah, I think the seasonedness of the labor movement and the working outside of the boxedness of the environmental movement is going to make a wonderfully delightful new form of moving things forward.
I think that, you know, there are more and more coalitions forming between environmentalists and unions and communities of color, and obviously that's got to be scary for big oil and for corporations.
Environmental racism is at work here. The policy of environmental racism means that people of color are disproportionately exposed to acts of environmental destruction and environmental contamination and environmental terrorism and chemical violence all over the world. And so both in the workplace and in communities around the country, Shell commits these crimes. And it's not only just against people of color, but all people who are who around the world who have been victimized by Shell's policies. The workers of Shell who work in the workplace or exposed to chemicals, unsafe and hazardous conditions. And what's important is that we must unite the people who work for Shell with the communities that are damaged by Shell into a coalition of conscience to work to transform the condition of the workers and communities here and around the world.
And much more attention needs to be paid on things like solar energy and wind energy, things that ultimately are going to be our sound in terms of not really fucking up the ecosystem, and are renewable. And unfortunately, the present administration has absolutely no foresight. But it's really not a question of foresight. Again, I think it really comes down to money and politics and corporate control of, you know, our policy.
This is Sir Moody Stewart, and he's going to be getting from us a certificate of shame. Shame! 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 So I want to introduce my brother Damu Smith.
I want you to turn your minds to what it must have been like just a few years ago when the leadership of the Ogoni people, Ken Saro Wiwa, and 7 other of his colleagues were marched to the gallows by the military, the repressive military under the former Abacha regime. And under the watchful eyes of Shell in Ogoni land in Nigeria, where Shell has destroyed the land, destroyed the water, polluted the air, contaminated the food supply of the Ogoni people. They sat by and watched
in complicity as the former Abacha regime in Nigeria marched Ken Saro Wiwa and his colleagues who fought against Shell policies to the gallows and hung them in cold blood. And so that the blood of the Ogoni people, men, women, and children who have been massacred, who have been shot down and jailed, whose villages have been destroyed by Shell in complicity with the Nigerian government. They have the blood of Ken Saro Wiwa and all of his colleagues and the people on their hands. We must understand that when that kind of activity takes place anywhere in the world, we as people of conscience must speak out. And that's why we are here today, to let everybody know, Ken Saro Wiwa, you did not die in vain. You didn't die in vain. We can fight back, and we can come right here to the United States, to little Norco, Louisiana, a place where I, on behalf of Greenpeace, has been working for several years in support of the environmental and economic justice struggle in a small, poor, semi-rural black community where people live only 17 feet from the fence line of Shell, where Shell again is contaminating the air, contaminating the water. There have been explosions. Some years ago, a young boy was cutting the grass on the front lawn of his grandmother's house, and the ethylene pipeline at Shell exploded and a fireball raced across the road, and the young man was killed instantly, and his grandmother was killed instantly, and she died under the tree in her yard. This is Shell Chemicals right in the state of Louisiana. And right there, the people there have suffered so long and so much. People are sick, they have cancers, they have sarcoidosis, they have all kinds of upper respiratory problems, they have a variety of illnesses that they associate with the contamination coming from Shell Chemicals. And so from Norco and New Sarpy, Louisiana, to Ogoni land in Nigeria, to parts of Latin America and the Netherlands, all over the world, Shell has led in the effort to destroy the environment and refusing to invest in cleaner and more efficient ways of producing energy rather than relying on the dirty business of producing oil and doing it for profit and doing it at the same time destroying the lives of people all over the world. What you got to say about that? We've got to organize. Yeah. So today we are here while they are dancing in Washington, D.C. Right now, we looked at the schedule on the internet. They're dancing right now. They're eating dinner. They got on their sequin gowns and their tuxedos and they're toasting. And they're getting an award. They're not thinking about the pain and the suffering of the family of Ken Saro Wiwa. They're not thinking about his mother and his father. They're not thinking about his brothers and his sisters. They're not thinking about his colleagues and his neighbors who still mourn their loss because of the brutal death. They're not thinking about the little children of Norco, Louisiana, and the little children of Ogoni land, and the little children all over the world that they have wrecked their lives. They're not thinking about any of these people while they're dancing in there right now. Well, we're going to do our own dance right here, right down these streets, and let everybody know how we feel about Shell's criminal record against the people. This is not... It's a spiritual struggle, and a political struggle, and an economic struggle. It's a struggle for morality and ethics and decency in the world. And one of the things I want to leave you with today is that every step we take, every voice we raise, every word we speak, everything that we do to organize it means something, because in the final analysis, we can fight back and win.
Think about the muscle of the money in their fist, this great corporate bully pugilist. To get away with anything that dollars will decree, to waste the natural wonder for the sake of their economy. Well, something has to change here, and it has to happen soon, before this good green earth looks like the surface of the moon. Let's put our heads together, let's see what can be done. Let's repossess our future while we still have one. It's just the price of our glory. Cost of all fame is just the end of our story. It's a crying, dying shame.
The first condition for freedom is an act of resistance.
Excuse me.
Hey, watch it.
Hey, can somebody turn some lights on in here?
If you need light to access this building, you can have your doctor certify your disability, then ask for special accommodation.
Equal access is a right, not a privilege.
I'm John Schorsch.
I'm Sarah Green.
I'm Deborah Peterson.
And I'm Donna Lawrence.
Ow! Oof!
It's an organization or company, whatever you want to call it, that basically puts together these trips that people can go on. I call them media-savvy people. They're basically anybody who's interested in creating some kind of media at an NGO that will create content. So Salaam Garage is picking different countries around the world with different focuses. For example, in India we work with orphans on the street, street kids, and the NGO called Vatsalya gets the kids off the streets and puts them into an orphanage, into a home. So if I take that for an example, what that trip is with Salaam Garage is the people go and they go to the NGO and they create this content, and then they bring this content back home with hopes to raise awareness and even sometimes raise funds and basically just get it to spread this awareness around using different types of media.
I'd done some travel before, but it had always been the kind of travel where you just show up and you take some pictures and try and get to know the area, and then you end up going home. Whereas Amanda's trip was specifically designed to take you in closer to the people on the street and outside the cities, on the farms in India, and that's what appealed to me, that we would get a lot closer to the actual culture than we would if, say, we'd just kind of flown there and gotten on a bus and did our own exploring.
That is definitely a very rewarding part, seeing that content spread around and seeing it get shared and seeing people hearing these stories that they'd otherwise never ever see. I mean, Vatsalya in India and Jaipur, India is a tiny little NGO. It's all grassroots, it's Indian run, and now people know that it exists and that many Vatsalyas actually exist all over India and all over the world. An NGO is a non-government organization, which is it's kind of like a non-profit organization with a particular mission trying to solve a particular problem. Salaam Garage is structured is just like the project I did with Rebor Village Project. The project is called Eight is Knocking, where I did all of this pre-production here in Seattle with a woman named Lois Mabewa Ngundi.
So I met Amanda in 2004. I went to Africa in 2002, and having been here for about 5 years, when I went back, I saw there was a lot of changes in issues around HIV, AIDS, and orphans. So that really troubled me, and I was thinking about what is it that I could do. And Amanda also, at that very same time, it was in March of 2004, had gotten some work that she was going to do in Kenya, but in a different city. So Amanda went and looked at probably the description of my imaginary a day in the life of a child now, and went to the village. Through my connection to the village, we identified a family that actually fitted exactly the description of the day in the child that I was writing on paper here. She's displayed these photographs in various places. You know, we've gone to, out in Oregon, we've showed it. She's had some various places where these photographs have told very powerful stories. And it's been simpler to tell a story through a photograph than having to describe what's going on. So it's really been an extraordinary help.
I saw people traveling, and I saw people with photo albums and people showing, you know, putting their photographs into Flickr, Facebook, YouTube, all that social media that's coming out. You know, so I saw people traveling, I saw people coming back and telling stories, I saw all this activity going on where people were creating content and bringing it back, and the content was about their trip, like me in front of the Taj Mahal or something. And I thought to myself, well, what would happen if all those tourists and all those travelers would visit an NGO for a couple days, and if they're interested, like visit an NGO, get to know a whole different side of traveling, like get to know a whole different side of the country that they're in. And instead of coming back and saying, yeah, there's all this poverty and there's all these problems, like actually meet people that are solving those problems and get to understand the problems on a different level with a little bit more depth. So basically what the book is it's a collection of 4 different projects that I've done in the world, in Brazil, Kenya, Romania, and Morocco. And my journal entries my journals that I was writing while on these trips. And the way that it's connected to Salaam Garage is that this is the kind of thing that, you know, people can make also if they come on a trip with us.
That's what I like, is we're making viral marketers, basically. They go and they have an amazing experience, they learn something about the issues in that country, and they come back home and they talk about it, they share the images, they share the stories. And it's those personal connections that are going to help build a community that's going to support the work that's abroad and, you know, build better global citizens.
Why am I so depressed and confused all the time? It's like I don't care about anything anymore. All I want to do is watch Fox News all day. I feel like I don't even know what's going on around me.
If you are experiencing symptoms like these, you could be suffering from corporate fasciitis. Corporate fasciitis is a disorder that affects millions of Americans each year. You are not alone.
Doctor, what causes this sickness?
Corporate fasciitis is an MTD. It's a media-transmitted disease. Let's take a look. First of all, let's open up the mouth. Say ah.
Ah.
Good. Any other symptoms?
I feel afraid all the time.
You see, as mainstream media enters your head, the misinformation releases a contagion. This contagion triggers a process similar to brainwashing. This disorder, which spreads throughout the central nervous system and eventually throughout the entire body, causes extreme cynicism and social lethargy.
So my television's poisoning me.
Not just your television, unfortunately, but also the radio and print media.
So what can I do, doctor?
Well, fortunately for you, there's an easy solution. What you need is Indymedia Presents. Why, with a weekly dose of independent media from Pepper Spray Productions, you can be back to your old self again, enjoying life, and most importantly, thinking for yourself.
Now I feel hopeful again, and I can take an active part in my community and the world around me. Thanks, Indymedia Presents.
Warning, regular ingestion of independent media may cause increased consciousness, acute political awareness, counter-hegemonic activity, enlarged cranial capacity, excessive hopefulness, and bloated critical thinking abilities. Ask your doctor if Indymedia Presents is right for you.
You can call me a fool, that's alright with me, I will. If you see this good round world breaking free, yes I will. Yes I will. They say they will incorporate the world over my dead body, over my dead body, over my dead body, over mine. They say they will incorporate the world over my dead body, over my dead body, over my dead body, over mine.